So what was it like to be a disabled student at Berkeley in the early 60s?
Well, to start with, you'd have been living in a hospital unit, treated as a medical problem. And apart from going to your classes, that's where you would have stayed. There was no possibility for taking part in ordinary student life.
And every single curb corner is like the Berlin Wall. You can't travel more than half a block in the city.
A curb cut is not about a ramp. It's a revolutionary act, understanding that you belong in the city and that the city belonged to you.
Those curb cuts are now every place in every city across this country, and they are there because of advocacy of people with disabilities. Ed Roberts and his colleagues in Berkeley.
I was the only disabled student on the campus. It was very weird. I was stared at all the time.
He's in this infirmary on campus where he doesn't want to be. It was a small hospital wing, but that's what they had available.
It was very clear that they didn't want me there. In the beginning, they were afraid I might die or something serious might happen to me. Once we convinced the university that I could go there, they were willing to take anybody after that. All right, a breakthrough. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And then in 1968, they had funding. And suddenly, boom, they have 12 people in there. They have women. They bring in the first African American. It changes. It changes. The feeling in there changes, the spirit changes. Now they have a team.
And then it became a whole different scene, it just opened it up. And so knowing all the attendants, knowing the different crypts, we were like, it just felt really natural, like a natural community.
They're sitting up late at night, not talking about their futures. They're talking about what can we do? And it was really the beginning of disability activism.
We really began to feel that we were fighting for our own independence and that there was a future for us out in the community. We had to really think through how to do it. How were we going to make ourselves free?
It was the late 60s, Vietnam War protests for the free speech movement were in 1964. I mean, things were raging.
The sea changes in the 60s. It was the realization that it was the environment and the attitudes of people that limited us, and not our own disabilities. This realization that we could run our own lives was just a huge change.
We have these students living at the Cal residency program up in the hospital, so they feared for their lives going out into the street.
Ed Roberts and others experiencing this a massive obstacle to get on and off campus. One night, as the legend goes, they gathered a lot of friends and snuck out. They brought sledgehammers and busted up the curbs in order to actually create an inclined path.
They would make their own curb cuts on campus and around town. They were trying to create accessibility right there where they lived.
This approach to reinserting themselves into the built environment by eliminating the step was an act of resistance. We had to reimagine who the city was for and how the city could be used. If you were on wheels, this is why Berkeley was such a hotbed for revolutionary change.
And that's fall 1969. And it started in Berkeley, in that hospital, with a bunch of people who were thrown together. They developed a fully operational program to support students with all kinds of different disabilities. And the key was that it was run by people with disabilities. In that way, it had the self-help model. Ed would say, "No, we haven't done enough, we have work to do. We have work to do, and we need to do it right now." And he's talking about revolution. He's talking about changing the world.
There were very specific indications that something was happening in Berkeley that was different. And I knew I belonged. I'm Ray Lipshay, actually Raymond. I came in 1970.
Ray Lipshay was one of the most adored architectural professors here at UC Berkeley, and he approached everything with love.
It occurred to me early on that it would be important to know about how other people experience the same buildings.
And And he decided to have architectural students workshop the solutions to architectural barriers in collaboration with community members that were users.
What makes this class quite different is that we have the students think about people unlike themselves.
I think this is real awkward. This is your person in a wheelchair, right?
Yeah.
She's going to have a devil of a time getting around.
Then I can widen this path up, I suppose.
Good idea, Charlie.
How many times have you been pushing a baby carriage and been so happy you didn't have to pick up that contraption? How many times have workers had their burden eased because those curb cuts were there? The curb cuts are an example of when you solve problems for people who are the most vulnerable, you solve them for everybody.
It's not just cutting into concrete, it's about cutting away barriers, obstacles, conceptions of what a body is and how it should move. The curb cut is a social sign of resistance, a revolution of autonomy.
I think Scott Sorensen was the one who asked me, he said, yeah, we've got this wheelbarrow and some cement. We want to go out tonight, you know, probably about 2 a.m. and pour this. And so I said, I'd think about it, and I didn't want to do it.
That was fun. That was fun. That was hijinks. That was sticking it to the university.
So it's not only about how the curb can affect changing one block, but it's changing an entire neighborhood, changing an entire city, changing an entire country. And that's the revolution that we saw take place in Berkeley.
To learn more about the history of disability rights, watch Change, Not Charity, the Americans with Disabilities Act from American Experience.